Hey guys, how's it going? Wanted to make a little video today about, I just finished up building my arrows for this season. And I just wanted to make a quick little arrow building video. I've been building my own for probably about a year now, and I think I've done either 3 or 4 dozen arrows sets in that time. And I've always kind of just bought my arrows and cut them and glued them together and called it a day. Which kind of works, but I've been doing a lot of research and watching some YouTube and reading some stuff, and found that there's kind of some ways that you can really squeeze the most accuracy out of your arrows. So I just kind of wanted to make a quick little video that kind of compiles a lot of the different stuff that I found along the way, and some of the things that I did to make this batch of arrows probably the best ones I built. So basically, the first step, I've got 6 steps here that we're going to kind of follow. So the first step is going to be, obviously, you're going to cut your full length shafts. So if you buy them full length, you either have a shop cut them, or you buy an arrow saw and you cut them yourself. I don't have a saw yet. I had a shop cut mine. So you're going to want to figure out how long that you want them. Usually your draw length plus about a ½ inch to a full inch is a good place to start. I'm actually running a little bit shorter than that. I have a 26.5 inch draw length, and I cut my shafts 26 inches carbon to carbon. But that's because my bow has a pretty short brace height. It's a 5-inch brace height bow, which kind of gives me like an extra inch right there. Most bows are 6 to 7 inch brace height. And also, with my setup, I'm kind of right on the line between a 300 spine and a 250 spine. I'm using the 300, but the shorter that the arrow is, it's going to behave a little bit stiffer, so I kind of try to cut it as short as possible to get it to behave a little bit stiffer. Seems how I'm right on the line. But if you're not sure about your arrow length, the best thing you can do is take a full length arrow and have somebody watch and knock it, draw it back, and then have somebody just take one of these pens, works great, the silver Sharpie, and just mark a spot on the shaft. And then measure it, and then that's where you'll cut them. So you can either, like I said, get a saw or have the shop cut them. And that's that step. Then the next thing is step number 2. We're going to square and spin. So no matter how perfect of a jig that you have, or whatever saw that you're using or whatever, there's always going to be some imperfections in the cut. It's not going to cut it perfectly squarely. So that's where this tool comes in. It's a squaring tool. So basically you lay the arrow across here like this, and this is a piece of 220 grit fine grit sandpaper, and you're going to put it in here and you're going to rotate it back and forth. What you can do is take a pen, one of these, and just draw around the outside of that edge, and then sand until all the pen is gone, and then you'll know that you've sanded it completely off. And what you're going to want to do, a lot of people only square this end of the arrow. They forget about the knock end. And from my experience, what I found when I spun test these arrows is that a lot of times if there's imperfection, it's going to actually be on the knock end. So just to backtrack real quick back to the cutting, if you cut your own, nobody says that you have to cut all of it off of this end. So you got to take 4 inches off. You could take 3 inches off this end, and if you spin your arrows first before you even cut them, and you find that one of them has a really wobbly knock, cut an inch off of this end. Do 1 here and 3 here instead of leaving this one whole and cutting this end. So you can definitely do that if you cut them yourself. And like I said, a lot of times if there's a wobble, it's going to be on this end. It's going to be on the knock end. So when you're squaring, make sure that you square both ends. So after you get your arrows squared up, cut and squared, then next thing is going to be, you're going to want to number them all. Again, this pen works great. Number all the arrows so you can keep them straight. This one just happens to be number 10. Then you're going to spin test. So this is the spinner that I have. I actually just bought these 2, and then you bolt them onto a piece of plywood or 2x4 or whatever. Just make sure you bolt it up squarely. So measure, so that these are perfectly flush with each other. Then you're going to bolt them on, and then you're going to spin your arrows, and you're going to see, you can see right here, this one has a pretty decent wobble to it. But that's actually, you're going to get some arrows that are going to have a wobble. And if you, after you've squared them and you spin them, and if you got one that's wobbling, you can try and re-square it a little bit and see if that helps out. But sometimes, especially with the little bit more cheaper arrows, you may just have some that wobble. So I just kind of set those aside. Basically, my goal was to make 4 to 6 perfect hunting arrows. So out of a dozen, you might get a couple wobbly ones. Just mark those, set them aside, use them for practice arrows, shoot them at a squirrel or something. But those just aren't going to be your broadhead arrows. So you're going to spin and check both ends, make sure that there's no wobble. And I put a asterisk here next to spin because we're going to kind of keep coming back to the spin test as we progress forward. So then after that, what you're going to want to do is weigh your components. You need a grain scale. This is the one that I have. It's a Maxus Elite. And this is going to help because at the end of the process, you want all your arrows to basically, as close as you can, weigh the same amount. So all of mine, the finished product, they're 532 grains. And the heaviest one is 532.2, and the lightest one is 531.8. So I basically have a 0.2, 2/10 of a grain, plus or minus, tolerance on these arrows. So that's really good. And that's what you want. You want uniform weight. So weighing your components, before you put the arrows together, weigh all the shafts after you've squared them, and they're going to vary in weight a little bit. Weigh all your inserts. They're going to vary a little bit. Weigh all your nocks. They're going to probably vary a little bit. And then kind of pair, say you have a lighter shaft, pair it with a heavier insert or a heavier nock to kind of even things out. And we're going to come back to that a little bit later when we get to the broadheads too. But okay, so after you weighed all your components, next you are going to want to insert tune. Now this is something that I had never heard of before. So basically what the premise is, you're going to put the insert, whatever weights that you're using or whatever, and then you're going to put the insert into the arrow, but you're not going to glue it in yet. Then you're going to make a mark. You can see right here, I marked it with my Sharpie on the insert and on the shaft. Okay? Now it's not glued in yet. And then you're going to spin test it. And if it wobbles, you're going to actually turn that insert just a little bit and then spin it again. And turn it and spin it. And turn it and spin it. And you'll find that there'll be a point on there that insert is going to spin the best, the straightest. Then you mark it again. You mark that place. You can rub out your old mark or use a different colored pen or just make it bigger or whatever, but make a second mark where you actually want the insert. Okay, that's the insert tuning process. I've never done that before, but it actually really does make a difference. So after you've marked where you want your insert to be in relation to your shaft, then you can glue it in. So for glue, I'm using aluminum inserts, so I just warm them up and then use a hot glue stick. This is actually a Gorilla brand glue stick, but warm the insert up over a flame, rub the hot glue on there, put it into the shaft, and rotate it a couple times. Make sure that glue is all evenly distributed around the inside of the shaft, and then make sure you line up where your insert mark is, where your insert tune is. So that's going to be your insert tune and gluing. Next step is huge, nock tuning. So I've never done this before, but Ranch Fairy actually does a great video on it, bare shaft nock tuning, and he really goes through and explains it all super in depth. But I'm just going to basically real quick touch on it here. You're going to do pretty much the exact same thing that you did for your insert tuning. You're going to mark an index point on your nock and on the back of your shaft. And then you're going to shoot the arrow bare shaft at a target, and you're looking for the tail to be either kicking left, right, up, down. And what you want to do is, I started with my best spinning arrow, just happened to be number 7, and that I designated as my tuning arrow because that was my best spinner. And you're going to tune all your other arrows basically to that one. That one's going to be the benchmark to which you tune all the other ones. Now I will say, for the nock tuning, you've got to have really, really good consistent form, because any type of change in your grip or your anchor point or anything like that is going to change how that bare shaft is coming off your bow. They're very, very susceptible to any little changes. So it's actually, I mean, you could look at it as a challenge, but I kind of look at it as a good thing, because you're going to individually do every single arrow, 12 arrows. So it's going to take you a while. It's not a one-day project. You're probably going to be shooting each arrow for, you know, quite a few shots. And if you make a bad shot or you pull it or something like that, or punch the trigger, then don't trust that one. But what you're eventually going to do is same thing with the insert. You're going to shoot it, and if you're getting a tail kick one way or the other, you're going to rotate that nock just a little bit, and then shoot some more, and then rotate, and then shoot, and then rotate, and then shoot, and eventually you will find a place on there that arrow seems to shoot the best. And the reason is because every arrow has a weaker side and a stronger side. So when it flexes coming off the bow, it's always going to flex the same way every time. So what you're doing is you're basically just aligning. You've heard the term spine aligned or spine indexed arrows on like some higher end brand arrows. What they've done is they basically made these marks already for you. They put it on a spine checker and they find where the weak spot or the strong spot is, and they mark it. So you can pay the extra for it, or you can basically just do it yourself. And you get another benefit from it, like I said, is you're really working your form, and it's going to force you, by the time you do a dozen of these arrows, it's going to really force you into shooting with some impeccable form, which is going to help you out a lot too. So it's a good thing to do. So then what you're basically going to do is, after you've Nockturned, you found your optimum point, you're going to mark that. Okay, so depending on what type of fletch orientation, you can have this in whatever relation to the string that you want. So maybe you have it so that this mark always goes up parallel to the string. That would be good if you were doing like a 3 fletch, because then you can put your cock vein on that mark. For me, I'm doing a 4 fletch, so I actually do it 90 degrees perpendicular to the string, facing away from the riser. And then I'm going to basically fletch so that my veins, you can see, are one above and one below that mark. So that's your insert tuning. Spend some time on that. Don't think that you're going to get that done in one day for a dozen arrows. It's going to take you some time to go ahead and get those tuned in properly. But once you do, it's going to make a big difference for you. And then the last item, of course, after we've done everything else, we're now going to want to fletch the arrows. I'm using a Arizona EZ Fletch tool. And for glue, I'm using, this stuff works great. Gorilla Glue in the green cap. It's gel glue. Don't try and use the liquid. It runs everywhere, makes a big mess. Gel will just make your life so much easier. One thing I have found with this tool, 2 things actually. It has a tendency, it puts your veins, if you don't do anything, if you just use it straight out of the box, it's going to put your veins like really far up on the shaft. So what I ended up doing is I would actually take the nock out a little bit, and there's index points on the nock so that I could have it the same width every time. But I would just bring it right to the end of these first set of index points, and that's that little bit of space there. It's about a ½ inch or so. That's actually going to, in relation to the shaft, move your veins back so they're not way up here. They're a little bit further back here. So that helps. And then for your rest clearance and other stuff like that. And then also, the way this tool is designed, it's got a spring system in it. So the idea, you put all your veins in, you put the glue on, and then you rotate this thing and it snaps shut. But sometimes it doesn't snap evenly every time. And it can kind of cause the veins to do some funny things. So what I ended up doing, I would actually not use that snap feature. I would just close up, because I fletch one vein at a time. So I would just hold them like this, put my glue on, and then just very carefully close this and seal it like that, and then put this cap on and let it set for about 10 to 15 seconds till the glue sets. So that's just a little quick overview on how I did my fletching. But yeah, anyway, so my finished product here, this is, I basically got 6 perfect arrows out of this, and then the other 6 are just going to be practice arrows. So I picked my 6 best spinners, the ones that are, the weight is aligned the best, and this thing is spinning dot on. And then, like I said, the weight, if you do, when you go to do your broadheads, I forgot to mention that, so we're going to come back to the weigh the components. So when you do your broadheads, you weigh those, and say you got one that's, a grain heavy or a grain light or whatever, you're going to pair that with a particularly light or particularly heavy shaft, and that's going to allow you to get that basically perfect weight balance on each arrow. So that's just a real quick overview. I'm going to leave a detailed list in my description box under this video that's going to give you all the components of the arrows. They're gold tip kinetic shafts, 300 spine. I got Luminox on the back, gold tip inserts, and the broadheads. I got two of these are the Kudupoint Contour Plus, and then my other broadhead of choice is going to be the Magnus Stinger. So I basically have two Magnus, two Kudo, and then the third broadhead out of both packs is just going to be a designated practice broadhead for me. So my quiver holds 4, so I got 2 Magnus, 2 Kudo, and then 2 practice on both ends there, or both points. So like I said, I will leave a list of all my tools and all my components in the description box. If you have any questions or anything, I'm on the Bowhunters of America page on Facebook. Go ahead and PM me or just throw a comment under here. But that's kind of some considerations for you for arrow building. Good luck to everybody this fall. We got about 3 weeks to go here up in New York. I got all my arrows built, so I'm going to be out there practicing and getting ready for the season. And hopefully I can put one of these bad boys through something. And I wish you all good luck. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.